Hey guys, Ron here. Excuse me, my voice is shot. Hope everyone's well. That's allergies for you. I just gotta show you this house. Start talking. Look at the size of that. That is a humongous house. Hey, where else would I be but Beverly Hills? As some of you know, I live near about a couple miles from the ocean and near the harbor, both the harbor and the ocean. It's been socked in pea soup with fog all week. Now I'm about 8 miles away. I had to get out. I couldn't stand it anymore. And here the sun is shining and it's beautiful. So I'm here today to film for you. I think somebody's getting out of the house that I was just filming from. It's not warm and it's almost May and it's only 64 degrees, but I'll take this over the June gloom. It's not even May yet where I live. Literally, I think it's been a week since I've seen the sun. It was out a little bit while I was walking the dog this morning and then gone again. Anyway, so I'm in Beverly Hills. There's a Ferrari. It's pretty tip. It's not the first Ferrari I've seen here today in the past 10 minutes. So today I'm in front of the home of Eddie Fisher and Debbie Reynolds. Now, this wasn't the only house they lived in. They moved from this house to a bigger house, which I couldn't find any information on, in Bel Air, a little bit swankier. But not too long after that, Eddie began his affair with Elizabeth Taylor, and Eddie and Debbie got divorced. So I wanted to show you this house. This house is also where Carrie Fisher and where Todd Fisher were born. They're doing work at the home, but they won't know. You're on here. See, so the landscapers are here at the house doing work. But again, they don't care what I'm doing. I could say Casa Famoso to them, huh? Is that famous house? Casa Famoso? I don't know, my Spanish is not that great. Anyway, so, and I'm going to show you this. That helicopter keeps going overhead. That's the police helicopter. Come on, guys. It's Beverly Hills. You probably don't need to be here. Casa Famoso. So this is the house where Eddie and Debbie Reynolds lived. And like I say, 1957, Carrie was born here. I'm not going to talk too much about Carrie because I'm going to do a video specifically about her on another vlog. Let's go across here. Oh, you can see the house in the background. But just now the guys are walking out. Again, not that they care. I don't know if they tell the owner. Today is Saturday. I don't know if the owner's there. Okay. So it's a beautiful house here in Beverly Hills. And, you know, this neighborhood, they're leaving. In this neighborhood, they're all built in the late 20s, early 30s. And as I said, I'm not going to tell much about Carrie because I'm going to do a vlog on her house, and then Debbie had a house on the same compound. It was like, it was a couple of acres, so there was a couple of homes on that Coldwater Canyon compound where Carrie was living when she died, and where Debbie was living where she died a day later. So, but I'll talk about them. This is about Eddie and Debbie, really specifically. Beautiful home, and actually right across the street, I believe it was this house, lived Luella Parsons, who was, you know, the gossip columnist, manager of the day. So this person's driving really slow. I always wonder if it's this Cadillac. No one's ever said, hey, it's my house. Once in Pacific Palisades, across from Kurt and Goldie Hawn, a woman kind of intimated, you know, why are you filming my house? And I wasn't. I was just walking by it. I was filming the house across the street. Anyway, so I think I'm going to walk up and down the street and talk about them instead of just showing the house. And we'll go from there. Guy's getting in a Toyota. There's no Toyotas allowed in this neighborhood. Didn't you know that? So let's talk about them. So Debbie Reynolds was, boy, to come from what she came from and then to move into this house must have been unbelievable. She was Mary Frances Reynolds, devout Christian, almost Episcopalian, family, or maybe they were Episcopalian, and very hardworking, no partying allowed, no drinking, no smoking, no dancing. I mean, the whole thing. And then for her to go on to marry pretty amoral at best Eddie Fisher, Jewish Eddie Fisher, that must have been something. Anyway, so Mary Frances eventually moves to Los Angeles with her family, and they did encourage her acting and her singing and her dancing, knowing she was very talented, and her beauty, beauty contest beauty. And she eventually made it in the films, and her and Eddie met briefly, and then they met again later on and started dating. And as far as Eddie Fisher was concerned, boy, I tell you, you want to talk about excess in Hollywood. Eddie, some people coming. Eddie was born in Philadelphia. Parents were very religious Jews, or at least his father was. So he eschewed that. Is that the name? Said he was culturally Jewish, but certainly not religious. His family called him Sonny Boy. He was a singer, and he was up in Grafsinger's, which was really a lot of the Jewish families. That's where they went families went. They stayed normally in the summer. They had camps for the kids and all kinds of outings, and they also had entertainment, and Eddie was one of the singers up there. And then he was eventually discovered up there, quote unquote discovered up there, and was, at a very young age already having hit records. I mean, it's hard to imagine today how famous he was. I mean, he was the it guy just before, or he was the it guy really till Elvis and the Beatles came along. Okay, I thought they were done working on the house, but he's got his leaf blower going, so maybe they're not quite done. Anyway, so Eddie was it. So they were a real power couple when Debbie and Eddie met. And oh man, I hate leaf blowers, and my dog hates them even more. Maybe I'll walk up and down the street here. Oh, his compadre is leaving, but he's going to do some leaf blowing first. So Eddie and Debbie were the power couple, and Debbie she kept saying, Luella Parsons and others really tried, especially Luella, really tried to persuade Debbie, even in the early years of their marriage, to not give up her career, not slow down, to keep going and be equal partners with Eddie. But Debbie was old-fashioned. It was the 50s, and Eddie said that she wanted to support Eddie's career, that she believed him to be more famous, making more money. She, especially after she had Carrie and Todd. By the way, Carrie's name was Carrie Francis, like Mary Frances. So it was always a reminder, almost like a junior. And they were very, very enmeshed. Somewhat complicated relationship, but unbelievably enmeshed till the last week of Carrie's life and Debbie's life. But again, that's another story. So, as I said, Debbie was saying how she wanted to, stand by Eddie, stand by her man in the 50s, and let him do most. She didn't want to give up her career, but, I mean, she was incredibly famous, of course, for Singing in the Rain and others. But she really wanted to see Eddie's career blossom, and he continued to be the breadwinner. So, where she did slow down a little bit, especially, and she did turn down some movie roles. She didn't turn them all down, but Luella Parsons said she should, keep going full bore. Anyway, so let's walk up and down the neighborhood here and take a look at some of these beautiful homes too. So Eddie was very good friends with Mike Todd, and Mike Todd was, I don't even remember his real name, very Jewish name, Avram something, and Americanized into Mike Todd. Responsible for Todd AO too, that company that did the sound in the theaters. A real go-getter. Mike Todd was Elizabeth Taylor's second husband, and he was known, at least by Eddie and others, as the only guy who could have, up until that point, tame Elizabeth, because he was very macho, cigar smoking, entrepreneurial, tough guy, workaholic, you know, gambler, the whole charming, handsome, rich, the whole bit. And evidently he was the one who, look at that beautiful pink Mediterranean. He was the one who could really tame Elizabeth and her emotions and her feistiness. And she was, you know, apparently very much in love with him. And although, you know, would she have 7 husbands? She might say the same all about, especially Burton. But anyway, so Mike and Eddie were very good friends. And of course, Elizabeth and, you know, I realize why so many people are walking, because it's the Sabbath, it's Saturday, and there are a lot of, Beverly Hills is a predominantly Persian neighborhood now, Iranian, a lot of Iranian Jews. And I think they're all walking because they're not allowed to drive on Saturday. It's the Sabbath. Anyway, so I think that, well, yeah, I think that, but so Debbie and Elizabeth became friends, obviously, with Mike and with Eddie. The two couples used to hang out frequently, and then Mike tragically died in a plane crash. I mean, they took off in bad weather. They didn't have the right kind of instrumentation on board. Everything was screwed up, and it was irresponsible and shouldn't have happened. And I believe that Elizabeth was waiting for him either at the airport or in the other city he was in, and understandably, of course, devastated. In fact, Debbie and Eddie's other child, Todd Fisher, Carrie's brother, was named after, the Todd came from Mike Todd. Anyway, so after Mike Todd died, Eddie started spending a lot of time alone with Elizabeth, ostensibly to console her. And I would imagine at first it was to console her, but as the time went by, they started having an affair. And basically it became an open secret in Hollywood, to the fact where Debbie would be in a room and people would finally whisper, "Does Debbie know?" And she would hear it. And she finally heard it one night at a gathering and decided to call New York. And she called Eddie's hotel. He didn't answer. She called where she knew Elizabeth was staying. No answer. Then she said, she said she was on the phone. She said she was Dean Martin's secretary, and she had Dino was, loud truck. Dino was calling for Eddie. Eddie picks up the phone. This is according to Debbie. Eddie picks up the phone. He says, "Dino." And Mary Frances, Debbie Reynolds, says, "It's not Dean. It's me. It's Debbie." And supposedly he says, "Oh shit." By the way, the studio gave her the name Debbie. She didn't change it herself. So anyway, you know, they wanted to reconcile. At first Eddie was really tried to win her back. Not that they had separated, but Eddie really wanted the marriage to continue, as seems to often be the case. And but he did eventually profess his love for Elizabeth. And as a matter of fact, right after the divorce, like a week after he married Elizabeth, the divorce from Debbie, Eddie married Elizabeth. And it was extremely devastating, especially in later years. Well, especially in earlier years to Carrie. But again, I'll talk about that when I talk about Carrie Fisher. And that was, you know, one of the things that devastated her life, plus her pretty serious bipolar disorder that she experienced. Dual diagnosis, bipolar with substance abuse. Now, it was thought by many, actually, that Eddie, I don't even know if he might have publicly acknowledged this, but it is said that Eddie Fisher, her dad, suffered from a more moderate degree of bipolar disorder. And Eddie was, in the beginning, you know, Eddie was very early on one of Max Jacobson's patients. Now, Max Jacobson was known as Dr. Feelgood. He was the one who would give injections to the movie stars. "Here, it's vitamins, it'll make you feel better. Here, President Jack Kennedy," gave it to Jackie Kennedy. There's a quote, supposedly, that Jack Kennedy said, I'll do this in my Kennedy accent, "I don't care if it's panther piss in there. If it makes me feel better, I'll take it." That sounds more like Teddy than Jack, but anyway, you know, God, Eddie Fisher said that he needed that boost of energy to go on stage, and it was speed. And Eddie ended up shooting speed, becoming what we used to call speed or speed freak. I guess now it would be meth, huh? He ended up being a speed freak for most of his life. And I read Eddie Fisher's first book. Evidently, the second book was even more salacious. I really want to read that one. A lot of details and sexually salacious stuff. I guess he was told by his editors it would sell more copies if he really put all the dirt out there. In fact, evidently, he accused Debbie of being a lesbian, which is hard to believe since she was married 3 times. Now, I don't know what her proclivities were after that or during those marriages to those men, but whatever. It is what it is. So, here's the home again. Like I said, Eddie did not have a happy ending. Eddie was, well, at the end of his life, he was in a wheelchair. He had a lot of physical problems, and he had married Connie after. Oh, so what happened to Eddie? Well, so Eddie goes off with Elizabeth, and they're having this torrid affair. Then they get married. She converts to Judaism. Eddie kind of becomes her partner in the business and works out the deal for Butterfield 8, which they called Butterball 8. Butterfield 8, I believe that's what the name of the film was. They demanded $1 million for the picture. It was almost unheard of then. She got the money. They were making a lot of money. But both their careers really suffered because Eddie was known as the home wrecker who blasted poor Debbie and left her with her children. According to Debbie, Eddie says that Debbie lied and went on a PR campaign to smear him. Debbie said that basically he was not Satan incarnate, but bad enough that he didn't come and see the children for quite a while. That Carrie at 2 years old and 3 years old would call him and say little Todd, her little brother, was getting bigger and they missed Daddy, and so on and so forth. We'll never know the truth of it. There's you know what they say, there's 3 stories, right? There's his side, her side, and the truth. Anyway, but apparently I tend to believe Eddie probably was a neglectful father, and that's certainly what Carrie said. I don't know what Todd says about it. But Eddie and Elizabeth continued on, and on the set of Cleopatra, she met Richard Burton. In fact, she wanted Richard Burton. She suggested Richard Burton for the role in the picture. They had seen him in the robe. I don't think she had met him, but she suggested him. And Burton worked very hard to get with Elizabeth Taylor. And supposedly, this is according to things I've read about 20th Century Fox at the time, which almost busted them, between Marilyn getting fired from Something Gotta Give and the delays and Elizabeth's health crises and depression and everything on Cleopatra, it almost busted the studio. In fact, it took a long time to rebound. But anyway, Richard ended up having an affair with Elizabeth. He bragged that he said, I won't use the word, but he said, I finally made love to Elizabeth in my car, in my Cadillac, on the set or off the set. And supposedly, again, don't know if this is true, supposedly he had a sit down with Eddie, and he said, look, mate, I'm going to take your wife. She's going to make me a star, and there's nothing you can do about it. And Eddie, in his passivity, and this is according to Eddie, in his passivity just kind of sat there and was miserable about it, but it happened, and let it happen. And he fought for Elizabeth. He even said in the press how much he was going to fight for Elizabeth, but wasn't to be. And Burton became her next husband, and of course they divorced and remarried, and I think she was married like 7 times. Anyway, and Debbie was married a couple of other times. I think she's married a total of 3 times, and it was kind of the same experience. She said that Debbie said that Eddie wanted a quick divorce, and there comes kind of a settlement he had worked out where pay alimony for tax reasons. Anyway, she says he didn't pay alimony, although she certainly had a great salary herself. I don't know if they pay child support or not. So, Hollywood breakups are always crazy. And Eddie, like I said, later married Connie Stevens, and he ended up in Berkeley with, I believe, his I don't know if it's his fourth or fifth wife, and he died there, but he lasted a lot longer than I expected him to last, a number of years. He always said women were his downfall, but I think if Eddie truly did have a moderate to mild form of bipolar disorder, that certainly wouldn't have helped. Unlike Carrie, he certainly wasn't public about it. I don't know if he was ever medicated over it because of it. And Debbie was in really bad failing health, bad failing health, and she had already had a stroke, and she ended up dying in was it 2017, I believe. Literally a day after Carrie died, she had a massive stroke over at Todd's house while they were planning Carrie's funeral. I mean, how tragic for Todd, especially. So that's it. These stories are so fascinating. Because these stars can have everything. Like Debbie, came from nothing. Well, actually, she did okay. She didn't do okay in her love life the rest of her life, but she did love her kids. Her kids did love her. She always had was in the business for over 60 years, and she was, I believe, in her late 80s when she died. So she did all right. Eddie's life was a little more tragic health-wise and career-wise, but those are the breaks, right? So anyway, like I said, I'm going to do Carrie's and Debbie's house up in Coldwater Canyon separately, if I can find a place to park on Coldwater Canyon. But again, this is the house where Debbie and Todd were born. Carrie and Todd were born, and where Eddie and Debbie lived. Well, I'm sure I left a lot out, but I can't remember everything, and I rushed so much to get here and get in this beautiful sunshine and get away from that damn fog. I'm out of breath. I think I'm going to take a walk on Rodeo Drive before I go home. And I've done Rodeo Drive during the day and at night for you, so should I film it? Nah, probably not. Alright guys, so this is Ron. I'm out for now. If you like the channel, please subscribe. Beverly Hills, $20 million homes. Look at all the traffic here. Again, it's just blows my mind. Quiet residential. At night, it's very quiet. During the day, a lot of traffic, even on the residential streets. All right, guys, if you like the channel, please subscribe. If you do subscribe, please hit the little bell icon next to the subscription button, and then you'll be notified when I post. Give me likes. I'd really appreciate it, guys. I'm only getting pennies for this channel, and I'd like to move through the algorithm so I have enough subscribers and likes so that I actually make money to at least pay my gas coming up here. It took me 35 minutes to get here today, and for a weekday it would be longer. Even now navigation had me avoiding the freeway. Can't even take the freeway on a weekend because there's so much traffic. All right guys, see you at the next location. Bye bye.